ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get started in just about 37 seconds.
Is that you calling for people to get to their tables?
Yeah, it's like, find a seat, please. And feel free to sit closer if you'd like to. This panel, unlike the last one, is not going to throw anything at you, so you're safe.
Wait, I thought we were throwing stuff at them this panel. No, Angela, shh.
All right. Let's do it. So thank you very much for coming out today. This panel, we're going to talk about creating comics for 4-year-olds.
Sorry?
No, yes, are you ready for it?
I came to the wrong.
That's it. Today we're talking about library cons, bringing a Comic Con to your library. My name is Darren Heiber, and I'm a young adult librarian in San Mateo County, just south of San Francisco.
My name's Quinn Chiu. I'm a children's librarian at Santa Clara City Library in Santa Clara.
My name is John Schlosser. I'm the head of IT for Santa Clara City Library System.
My name is Katherine Keller. I work for UNLV, the Teacher Development and Resources Library. For the last 10 years, I've been on the steering committee for the Las Vegas Clark County Comic Book Festival, and I'm also the voice of libraries on the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund's Executive Board.
That was a lot of stuff. That was awesome.
I know, right? I'm Lisa Valdez, and I'm the outreach librarian at LA Pierce Community College.
I'm Angela Ocana, and is this on? You guys can hear me, right? So quiet.
Always.
I always want to yell. I work for Santa Clara City Library as well. I just do stuff there. It's fun. It's a good job. I like it. It's fun.
So if you are Twittering or hashtagging anything, this is the hashtag you'd like to use. And we're just going to start with, obviously, the first question: why Comic Cons? Why bring those to libraries?
I think, how many of you guys have actually held a library con? Raise your hand. Yeah, ooh, girl, so many. And then how many of you guys have not thrown one, but you went to one that was like at your local library? Okay, yeah, nice. Oh, good, you've been to mine. That doesn't count. So, Darren, why did you do a con? So, your con is very different from my con. Why? What's the point? Free stuff?
I was going to wait till we got to the vision part to talk about it. But so if you were here last year, Angela and I promised that we're not going to talk about the same things we did last year.
Same panel.
Yeah. And we thought that we actually brought the con idea to our system because we thought that it was going to be really important to just to bring a different perspective to it and to encourage not just the consumption of comics, but actually the creation of comics. And I think that's something that makes our comic experience a little bit different. Our Comic-Con is not one that is a single-day event. We do a month-long series of events, and it's currently spread out over about 20 different library branches throughout the library system. So it's expanded from just the San Mateo County libraries, which are 12 branches, to the entire Peninsula library system. What about yourselves? Why do you feel like cons are important in libraries?
Because cons are fun, and cons bring the people. They are a fantastic way to reach out and engage all aspects of the community.
Well, I did it at the community college level because my largest demographic is 18 to 24. So I feel like they're just barely out of high school, and your average 18 to 24 is not what it used to be. And so they're still interested in these types of things. And we're still, it's very surprising even with literacy is that a lot of times students or people slip through the cracks and they're still not reading. So with this, the idea of why I did it also is because of actress and creator Erica Alexander. She said that she was told when she was creating a graphic novel for African Americans, she was told by a very large publisher that African Americans don't read science fiction and fantasy. They are not interested in it, so why should I publish yours? So that's when she took it upon herself to decide, I gotta start creating my own stuff. And so that's her actually in the background of that picture, fussing at somebody in front of her poster of her book. So she did my con. And so I just thought it was so inspirational that when you don't see yourself being represented, when you're not being taken seriously, I'm just going to do it myself. And I had her come and promote that with our students.
That's like super awesome. Well, because we talk about diversity, right? The last panel before us was about diversity in comics. And I think when you have to go justify to your city council, you have to justify for funding that your topic is like, because we want people to read in a fun environment, and we often overlook, like, we're trying to spread diversity by bringing creators together from our area that are telling different stories that aren't being picked up by big publishers, but have amazing stories to tell, and what a great platform to give them. And so I think we can often relate Comic-Cons back to literacy and fun and cosplay, and yeah, we're gonna talk about all that, but I love that point of we can bring diverse creators together that are in our own backyards and give them a voice that maybe they're not gonna get somewhere else at these large cons.
Yeah, and I think as librarians, we're always being like, comics are literature, like comics are reading, like that counts. And a Comic-Con is a great way for us to kind of like put our money where our mouth is and be like, we are gonna celebrate this medium because we think it's really important in libraries.
I think that's kind of why you notice like a quick pause while we say why Comic-Con's here, because all of us are like, well, why not? I mean, this is exactly what we're focusing on.
I don't know if you know, but you can't tell your city council, duh. Right? Like they're not like, oh, yeah, money? No.
I would also like to add that in the issue of education, visual literacy and information literacy are becoming increasingly important in the discussion about how we teach people, and comics are the perfect example of visual and information literacy.
I mean, I think something that you brought up was not just administration who you have to explain this to, and who you have to, I mean, justify isn't exactly the right word, but who you have to get excited about this, and it's also your coworkers. And I think that helping them understand how comic books do play into the visual literacy aspect, just general literacy, is a big part of that buy-in. And I think when they see people creating as well, a panel before us just had, they said one of their best passive programs that they have are just a blank page with comic panels on it that they encourage kids to create with. When people are seeing this creation, they're seeing people be a part of this, they get really excited, and they want more of that in the library. One thing that I think is really important for us to talk about, you'll see the term Comic-Con thrown around at several different libraries, but it's very, very important that you know this before you buy a website, before you start putting out your promotional material. The term Comic-Con is not one that we all have free access to. And so you do have to check in with Comic-Con International to use the name Comic-Con if you do create something at your library. The nice thing is they love libraries, obviously, and they want to work with you to find a way to make sure that you can use the name correctly and use it in a way that helps their brand and helps your brand as well.
Darren, who would you say that you could trick into talking to help start the approval process for you to use the word Comic-Con?
I feel like that's a trick question somehow. I'm confused. Is this
I
just
was
because of
just
the
going
bright
to throw
lights?
Erwin under the bus. Guys, this is Erwin. He's got a fabulous jacket. Yeah. Erwin is, let's side note for a second. He's amazing. He works for San Diego Library, by the way. Wonderful. He's also the guy when we talk about, which I know we'll do because my buddy John's on this panel, when you have to have a mastermind to help keep you organized and together. For us, that's Erwin, and he's the one who does that. And he's also your really great connection between library world for what you want to create and Comic-Con, because they were like, hello, Mr. Erwin, we would like to do these things. And he's like, okay, let's do it. So he's a really great guy to tap. He's pretty nice. He only bites on Thursdays. Low blood sugar. He gets a little angry, so yes.
So now that you've done a good job of convincing the people around you that you need to have a Comic-Con at your library, the next thing you really have to pitch is what you want that Comic-Con to look like. And so I spoke about this briefly in terms of ours. Something that was really important for ours was not actually to have a single day event. This is a place where I might conflict with other people in the panel. Because one of our concerns about the single day event is actually about access. It's an awesome experience. It brings together a lot of people. They get to be a part of something much larger than them, which is really amazing and invigorating. But we also find that sometimes when you bring together a group that is that large, and especially when it relates to comic books and super fandom and everything, that can be very intimidating for people. And so for us, we really wanted to create a bunch of different experiences throughout a month so that each person could tap into the one that's going to work well for them. I think that there certainly are advantages and disadvantages to that, but it's something that's worked well for us. And in terms of our events, what we do is we anchor several major author events with where we use those as anchors, and then we also include a lot of interactive workshops, a lot of opportunities, as I mentioned before, to create, and then a lot of up-and-coming artists and creators as well, and opportunities to really engage with people in more intimate environments. And that's the San Mateo County Library's Comic Arts Fest.
Yeah, for us at Santa Clara City, we actually did a big one-day event. So exactly the opposite thing. But for us, it worked. Like, we like filling the building with people, and it does create that kind of atmosphere of excitement. And we also had, what was really great about our con is we had so many cosplayers come, thanks to this guy who knows like every cosplayer in California, basically. And the kids were just amazed by like the crowds and seeing how many people were excited, and like the level of interest and excitement I think went up just because of how like interesting and exclusive of a one-day event it was.
I think the other hard part about it is like Santa Clara City relative to San Mateo County is like Santa Mateo County is huge. Santa Clara City is small, so we have 2 smaller branches, and it only makes sense for us to have it at like the big library, and we would just do smaller events at the smaller libraries. I think when we talk about vision, though, what we're also looking at is what does the day of your event look like? What does the lead up look like? If you're just like, man, I want to hold a con like Comic-Con, like maybe that's a really big vision, and you should start really small and be like, you know, let's have some author talks and let's do some crafting programs, or just merge a few of those things together. And so when we did our con, we had to come up with a very good blueprint of what that looked like. Where were we gonna put author signings? Where were we going to put Cinderella? Because kids are gonna flock to them. Where are we going to do the librarian-led panels? And where are we gonna put people who are selling stuff? And if you don't have a vision of what the day of your con looks like if you were a patron, then you kind of struggle, I think. Did you guys have the same experience during your guys' cons?
Well, I would say with the Vegas Valley Comic Book Festival, we spun out of the Vegas Valley Book Festival, which means that certain events of ours have to kind of align with them, but in terms of branding and marketing, we have to align with them in certain ways, and especially with certain approval of verbiage on event flyers and so on and so forth. But that has actually been a good and positive event for us because it has given us a template to work from. And it also allows us to advertise at their event, which occurs in October. So we were able to keep the momentum going. People, like, they go to the book festival, and then they can come to the comic book festival, and it works pretty well.
I guess I would say with mine, the venue that I had was about the size of this room. So we didn't have a lot of different spaces to choose from. So I just said, we're gonna start with a baby art con, and then we're just gonna section off our room, and then we can have different things going at different times, but then we'll like break up different parts of the program. So the first hour, you know, we had we can only afford 2 hours of free photo booth, you know, just unlimited pictures, just shove everybody to the photo booth, and as they take pictures, just kind of get everybody to kind of start going to the booths and working with the creators, whoever's drawing, you know, kind of like just try to get them to work the room, because we're going to cut it off at a certain time to actually start the panel. And with each panelist, they were going to be, you know, displaying, you know, different videos going in the background, because we had a variety of different types of artists. So I kind of envisioned what we kind of wanted to do with that, and then what's so funny though is, you know, you have all these people on board with you, and then when you look up, it's just you, and it's like, what happened? Where did everybody go? Oh, I had this concert, and so, you know, and you look up and it's like, okay, I got to make this work. I was so excited, but literally when I was so happy when it was over. Just because it was just so much work. You know, you're your own worst enemy because you're a perfectionist. You want everything to be perfect, but pretty much if people are there and they're having fun and they're getting free stuff, pretty much they're good. You know, and pretty much we just happen to have the funding to be able to fund a lot of things. So I next time I will do a lot more partnering locally, but because it was my first one, I kind of was just trying to feel out what actually was working in the space and the time that I had to create. And it's easier when you have a lot of money to work with. It made it easier for me just to pay people to do stuff. So I could do just the World of One, but next time I try to do it, I won't have that money, and so I'm really gonna have to call you guys because I know I won't be, you know, I really have to try to figure out how am I gonna make this work if I don't give people money.
Well, we had, and I know we're talking about planning, so last year's panel, we were up here talking about cons and we hadn't thrown ours, and we were calling John our golden unicorn. And then we had our con, and then we decided to nickname John Spreadsheets. So John, tell us about, since you are very, very organized, which is a boon for us, like you have to find a John at your library, like that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
So John, will you walk us through what is your planning process? How far out are you going when you're planning something as, like, so we had 7,000 people at our con. How do you plan, how do you begin the planning stages and we have a council, how do you keep the council kind of in track and not like letting us see shiny objects?
Yeah, and that's kind of the hardest part. So for us, when we picked our con, we were going to go big or we were going to go home. So it really depends on how much risk you guys want to take. Do you want to spread it out, make it a little bit smaller? We opted to just go all in. We had only done one large event that last year, and then we opted to do Comic-Con. We didn't really have a lot of flexibility on dates or anything because we have so many programs and we share the park. So you have to figure out, you really got to find a date. We go to the calendar, we see what's available, what other cons are out there. So for me, I start the spreadsheets, we get our team. You really got to keep them on track. I mean, we started months in advance for our first Comic-Con, probably 6 months in advance.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, we started pushing marketing easily 4 or 5 months before our show as well. So we really got to...
We're on month 2, and our con is in October, I think. Is what we're on currently?
I think so. I haven't looked since.
This is why I can't. I'm like,
We got a ways to go.
So yeah, we have spreadsheets. We have spreadsheets for everything. We have our agendas that go out. It's Google Docs, so we share it out with everybody. It's on a Google Drive. Get everybody on there. Give them all access. You can see who accesses it and who doesn't.
He glared at me. I don't look at it until like 2 days before the con.
Or after the meeting. So you've got to have it for budget, your speakers, your time slots. We go over everything because we had so many things going. I brought a couple of our program guide that we had, so you could just see everything that we had going on in ours. I mean, it was a ridiculous amount of stuff. We probably had like 50 things going on throughout the day. So you really got to be organized for each one. We had a point person for each. I kind of took everything, and then we had areas like Kelly took care of like all the crafts. Angela took care of all the scheduling of all the volunteers. So you really got to build your team off of that, their core skills, and what they're going to bring to the table.
I'd say we just held our second Comic Arts Fest in February, and our first one. So I want to go back to a little bit about the vision real quick. Our first one had a budget of about $5,000, and we had about 600 people total participate in over 20 different events. For our second year, we started our planning basically right after the first one ended at that point. But we did a light touch planning then, and we really just wanted to get people together, get them on the same page, make sure that we learned from what we did the first time around, and really just trying to encourage people. You're going to find that one of the hardest things in the planning process is if you want to bring in artists and you want to bring in creators, is connecting with them and finding something that's going to work, and bringing together panels and bringing together different groups. And so they did mention this in the last workshop as well, that you need that year to start working through it, to start connecting with people. It really does help. If you don't have it, don't worry. You can still make something amazing and make it work. But I found that we really needed to stretch it out. And now we're meeting, I would say, every 2 months or so in the early stages. But even now, we just at our last meeting said, you know, we're not doing a good enough job of getting creators to be a part of this yet. would it help for us to have a weekly email that's just like, hey, who did you reach out to this week? And we just implemented that, and it's been a good reminder for me so far. Like, it's really helped get the fire under my butt to make things happen.
So what you're saying, Darren, is you're very lazy if no one reminds you.
I'm
If
very,
John's not sending
That
you
sounds
busy.
familiar.
you can have John, he'll send you emails, he doesn't even work with you.
That's it. I need the spreadsheet master, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
but I love what you said about like doing it early. So if you have a local con in your area, and I'm so sorry if this is your local con, is San Diego Comic-Con. But we would go, we have Silicon Valley Comic-Con, and we would go up there. I know our teen librarian was like just collecting local creators' cards, being like, we're a library, come to our con. We're a library, come to our con. And you're really judging how they feel. I know, like, I think Kelly was selling stuff. She's like, I gotta give me stuff at the Oni box. Was that it? Was today?
Yeah, no, I feel like since we started doing these library Comic-Cons, every time I see like a creator or publisher, I'm like, so do you do library outreach? could we connect? Always be selling.
AKA, give us free stuff for our con.
I actually do appreciate that. It's like, I want to know, what questions should I be asking? How do I get into people's faces? You know, it's like, I mean, do you just ask, do you do library outreach, or is there, are there other ways that you connect with them?
My experience with the Vegas Valley Book Festival, we have found that creators who you wouldn't expect that would come to your little con, okay, in our case, we do have a budget, and we can give people an honorarium, which helps cover travel expenses, but as soon as they hear library, many other creators who would be like, I don't know if I want to come to a Comic-Con. They're like, library, helping people, totally there. There is a certain amount of altruism in the amongst comic book creators, and totally tap into that.
Yeah, I think there is like a shocking amount of generosity out there towards libraries, and we should totally take advantage of it.
And it's building a lot of goodwill. So we lift our no selling policy on the day of the event to support small businesses and creators. So they're allowed to sell their merchandise and anything that they've made. And I think that brings a lot of goodwill because they're going to spend 8 hours there. Our con is, I think now it's from 10 to 4, but they're going to spend all day. Like, we give you lunch, but that's about it. And they're working it. They're like, because they're the face of the library. So you're bringing in these creators that you want to have a positive interaction with the public, because then the public's going to be like, oh, these people were so mean to me and all these things. But once you build up that goodwill with creators, like now, even in just our second year, I feel like we've booked up so much stuff and so many people were like, can we come back? That you're like, oh, okay, it's like building, and they're telling their friends. Like, we'll see them and they're like, hey, this is my buddy who's on the other aisle of Artist Alley. Can they come as well? And now we're running out of space.
We're actually over full. Yeah, we can't take any more. We have so much. We actually have to.
We're
turn
over full,
away.
John. I'll talk to you about that later.
VVCBF, our Artist Alley and our vendor area books up very quickly. We have a wait list. But there, in addition to comics creators who you should totally reach out to, and comics writers and colorists, and because people are often like curious, how does a comic book get colored? We've had hi-fi coloring come in, bring a blank page and show how the magic happens, and people were fascinated by that. But find your local good comic book store, and you'll know who they are. They're the people that work with you during Free Comic Book Day. But also, find your local independent newspaper or alt paper. Tap into them, because they'll give you press coverage and interview opportunities that your local major news outlet wouldn't. If with the connection to your local good comic book store, ask if any of their customers happen to work for the local news or TV station.
And your local comic book shop, I know it's a little later on, but like your local comic book shop is a wealth of information. And I love how you said good comic book shop, because we're not going to disparage anyone, but there are good comic book shop owners and there are bad comic book shop owners. They're not bad, they don't have the time. They're trying to keep their business afloat and they don't want to help you because they're busy. Our local comic book shop is up for an Eisner this year for best comic book shop in the world. So she's really supportive. Her mom's a librarian, so it's like an in. But she's super supportive. She runs fundraiser drives for us for free comic books. She works with us on Free Comic Book Day. You need to get your orders in, by the way, by Tuesday if you're going to do Halloween Free Comic Book Day, which Stranger Things will have a comic book, by the way. So there's so many different things that, like, a great comic book shop owner, she emailed us and was like, do you need artists? Here's all the people I work with. Do you need gaming? Here's what we can do. And they're not expecting anything in return. They're just like really helpful and want to help the community. So a great comic book shop owner is, for me, essential.
I would also say, depending on if you're going to do any before or after programming, you can reach out to other local businesses. In Las Vegas, there is a wonderful independent coffee shop called Grouchy John's Coffee. You walk in, it's all covered with fanish artwork. And so they are a great partner for come out and give coffee, come do certain kinds of, have a pre-meeting drink and draw, but it's coffee and not liquor. But also there is a bar not far from the main branch where the Vegas Valley Comic Book Festival is held, and we've booked geek bands into that bar and had a pre and an after event, and that the bar is more than happy to have us book an event in because they know we bring the geeks.
That's. I was
I'm
just
stealing
gonna
that
say
idea,
that.
right? We're stealing that one. We're gonna go to the bar with the band. And
Well, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think if
we've
you're
had
having
Kirby
trouble.
Crackle play. We've had Kirby Crackle and other bands like that come and play us. It's great fun.
Nice. I was going to say, if you're having trouble getting the buy-in from your local comic book shop or from other businesses, I mean, the thing is, you can really parlay that into an opportunity to create a good connection. And if you've got a supportive administration or that will let you host events outside your library, I mean, that's a really good opportunity to say, hey, we want to do part of our con at your place. We really want to connect with you and tie it together. I found that that's worked also to bring in creators who, if library wasn't a heavy enough hitter, bringing them into schools as well and saying, I've got a connection at a local middle or high school. I want to get you in and have you talk to an entire grade. That really helps a lot, and they get excited about that.
I think it's interesting too because at an academic library, usually our outreach is done for high schoolers. They have outreach for high school, but I am outreach for the campus. So me going outside the community, I really have to find ways in which to let them know how important this is. So what I did was I bought a book bike. I didn't put a picture in there.
Well, you bought a book bike for it?
Book bikes are starting to become more popular for outreach. So when I'm advertising stuff too, I just ride around on my bike.
do you put the Ghostbusters logo on your book bike? You should. Just be like, haha, and flames and the DeLorean on the other side. That would be really, that's a great marketing
It's a great promo
tool.
idea. We should
Okay,
do
I have
that.
to have you pimp my book bike. But
I can draw stick figures like nobody can. Don't worry about it.
But I mean, it's just a good, it's a good conversation piece too. And so I had told them, I said, well, one way that I could, partner with the community is through my book bike. Not only am I doing outreach on campus, but I can start partnering with the community because they have local bike rides. So I said, now I have a conveyance in which I can get involved. And so it's also showing the community, oh yeah, Pierce is in our community. Pierce College is in our community. Hey, maybe we can start using, partnering with these people for mentorships and internships and all these different types of things. But if you look at this picture here where you see Bellatrix Lestrange, I'm standing next to Bellatrix Lestrange, it's also with your staff that you work with, you never know who knows who, because actually 2 of the library staff knew 2 of the creators on my panel, and so they actually were instrumental in getting people because then they know people and then they know people. 6 degrees of separation was happening here, so when I just told them about my vision, they were like, we have Theme Friday. So every Friday, we do either Harry Potter Day, or we do Steampunk Day, or we do, and the students get involved too, then they'll just, now we have an outlet. Now we have an excuse to dress up and nobody thinks we're weird because library is, they're all weird. So, and now, but it kind of builds a, communication and relationship with the students, and the more that they see that us doing this, the library is just so instrumental on campus now that everybody comes to the library, and we pretty much, the librarians have our foot in every single thing that's going on that campus, which makes everything so successful that we do.
Well, I think you're lucky to have those students because you just don't know the wealth that is there that can come and step up. And I found the same with us as well. I had no idea how many of my colleagues were really into comic books until we said we're doing a Comic-Con or our Comic Arts Fest. And it's unbelievable. You do get that extra support and that help there.
Yeah, we didn't know that John was a really big geek and a stormtrooper on the side.
It wasn't obvious.
He came to work one day and we're like, all right, this is him. But having someone, like, even tapping your page staff or anybody who works, like John is really, I feel like, knows a lot of people in the 501st, is a pretty nice muckety-muck in there, and helps us get those connections that we can't really have the con to the size that we do if we didn't know John. And I think that's something that you can look for within your own staff, and don't feel like, also abuse their spouses. Like, be like, hey, what does your husband do? I mean, we do that when we're trying to gather money for donations. Like, who do we know that works at Apple? Oh, well, my friend's husband works at Apple. Okay, well, can they get us an in? So don't think about it just in terms of something very high tech and we're trying to get grants, but like the nerd outreach is very instrumental, and I don't think that we can do that if we don't have somebody like John on our side who's very involved in geek culture, and can bring that to the table and say, here's all the wealth of knowledge I have. So it's a very great boon if you can find that within your library.
Nobody's off limits at our library. We'll ask everybody for anything. We'll ask one of your coworkers' husbands who has in at NASA. That's how we were able to get NASA to come out to our last STEM event. So leverage that. We've got staff that's given us great ideas for crafts. Our former employees does our photo booth. So we get a photo booth really, really cheap all day because he used to work for the library. So they're always paying back to the library, and they're always glad to do so.
And I think one of the great things that we found is because it's a Comic-Con and like people love Comic-Con, people are willing to be there and help. Like there are so many people, like staff that we didn't even know were into it, who came out of the woodwork and wanted to help us.
And came in costume, and they were amazing, and it was really great.
Everybody wants to work the Comic-Con day. Nobody wants to work the big science day, which is like hilarious. They're like, oh, can I dress up like a wizard at science day? And I was like, no, that's not what happens. But feel free to wear it at Comic-Con day. It's like much more exciting and fun.
I think even beyond your staff, you've also got your volunteers. I find that our teen volunteers are exceptionally helpful for this as well, and they get really excited about it. They help create a lot of the visual aspect of it, and that way they have ownership and they want to bring in other people. Other things that we've done as well to find cheap community interest is we've reached out to different meetup groups. You can post it next door. You can just try to get stuff out there, not to advertise the event that's coming up, but to really look for support and look for people that are interested in being a part of it early on.
I would mention two things about the whole thing with Apple. If there are large corporations and large offices in your community, reach out to them, because many of them do have volunteer programs. Last year that we discovered that Cosmopolitan Hotel has like a community outreach and service program. They were happy to go amongst their ranks of employees and see who wanted to gain some I guess there's an incentive inside the corporation. If you volunteer so many hours, you get some sort of bonus or benefit or something. They were happy to send people over. And then also to go back to colleges and universities, my college, UNLV, the College of Education has, for incoming teachers, a service learning component. You have to take a seminar class that has a service learning component. The working 4-hour shift at our event qualified as that service learning.
What else do we got on this magical list of stuff?
I know, looking down.
I'm so excited for cosplayers. Are we there yet?
Can we talk about cosplay?
Sure, yes,
let's talk about cosplay.
So this is, I mean, cosplay is actually, it can be a little bit contentious, but.
Can it?
It has not been contentious for us. It's been 100% in.
Well, no, I mean, it's awesome, absolutely, but I mean, it can be contentious. It's like, there's a reason why people have to zip tie their weapons to themselves, I mean, there's a reason why.
Yeah, John put on, so when we were doing so we built a whole web page that was separate that I had absolutely nothing to do with, which was awesome because it looks beautiful. And John was like, we're gonna put a weapons policy about the cosplay. And I was like, we're a library, like who's gonna bring weapons? Like what is this even a thing? But he brought up the really realistic point of like, you should have that on about having a weapons policy. And you do kind of worry that maybe somebody's costume will be too scandalous and you're like, how do you feel about that?
And it wasn't something, right, we didn't deal with it at all on the
We
day.
didn't.
We had no problems, but we did have the policy written down.
And
So
we did have respect each other. Cosplay is not consent, so we made sure we had that out there so it was very clear on our website what values we stood for and what was expected of everyone attending the con.
I mean, I think it's just like any other library policy. You have it there to protect you in case something comes up, but you want to never go there, you know?
Yeah, and I think most of our library policies that you have are already set in stone, so you don't think about like, we got to make sure that Naruto costumes are fine. Like, you don't think about rewriting a physical policy just to put on your website for something like weapons or dressing up in costume, but then you can come back to, if you do ever have an issue, you want to plan for the worst.
And we did ask all the customers that did have weapons that they'd be holstered or at their side for the 501st, the Rebel Legion, the Mando Mercs. We asked that they all did that just because we had a lot of kids around and we're a library and just didn't want that to be an issue.
For us, 1,000% cosplay. So we took a survey afterwards, and I think in the survey byline I wrote something like, "Are we going to have another Comic-Con? Question mark. Take this survey to find out." And because we had 7,000 people, I was like, "What did you think of the con?" And one of the best features, people were like, "I got to take pictures with superheroes." Because not everybody can come to Comic-Con, and this was something where it's a friendly, inviting environment where the John, how many cosplay groups did we have? He just rolled his eyes and cried.
We had a ton. I mean, we just had groups and groups of people.
It was like Mando Mercs, the Avengers, tons of 501st.
We had the R2 Builders, Avengers Initiative, and then we had other
Park guy.
Jurassic Park guy.
Jurassic Park Jeep. Yeah, we just had everybody that we could get came.
We had that dinosaur that you guys see in that photo there.
We put a staff member, actually a volunteer in there, and made him.
We put a teenager in that costume.
So how do you connect with all these groups? That's what, I mean.
Do you have a John?
No, yeah, see that, we don't have a unicorn. We don't have a magic unicorn, John.
Well, you know, just actually reach out and contact them. Like, you know, is there a 501st? If you have that geeky person that you see regularly in your library, that geeky community member, like, ask them, are they a member of any local fan groups? Are there any local fan communities?
And also, planning is really important. Do not plan your con on May the 4th. The Stormtroopers are oddly busy that day. Don't do it on Free Comic Book Day. The comic shops have booked them. So even though the marketing for that day seems like a really great idea to hold your con, sometimes they're really busy. We bumped into that a little for this year. We're holding our con just based on where we had to have it on the same day as New York Comic Con.
And SAC Anime.
And you don't think that's an issue? Because you're like, oh, for New
Yeah,
York.
it's on the East Coast.
It's on the East Coast.
We
had-
lost people to New York Comic.
It's an issue, yeah.
Yeah, so just be careful. Don't think that, especially if there's like a local, like say you're doing it the same day as like the book arts fair, like you're not gonna have as many people come because you're dividing your city up into what are they gonna do in that area. So that's also an issue when booking cosplayers. We pay our cosplayers in food. How do you guys pay your cosplayers? We're like, here's a sandwich.
We pay them in snacks too, and then also we give them we also have a cosplay programming panel, like how to do cosplay. You know, we've even had one of our most well-received panels was one like it was called Cosplay Out of Your Closet, and it was an idea. It was just an idea. You don't have to spend a lot of money to put together a really cool costume. So I would say if you want to have cosplayers, have a cosplay panel or track of programming.
And I think it's important to put on your marketing, come in costume, because one of the most awesome things, like we had all these amazing cosplayers who came just to cosplay, but we had so many like kids, teens, adults come in their own costumes because we said come in costume, and it totally changed the atmosphere of the event.
And for cosplayers, what they really want, I do know a ton of cosplayers. I'm part of the 501st Rebel Legion. I'm an R2 builder as well. I still had to put in the event request, just like being any other Joe out there on the street. So do that, put it in, you'll be assigned somebody, check back often, check back a lot. But what we're really looking for, what they really, really want for events, they want a place where they can change, that's private, so they can change, they can take a break. It gets really hot walking around in plastic. They want water, and they will never say no to food. So that's really the secret to success there. Just keep checking back with them, give them a good place to change, give them food and water, and they'll be happy, and they should keep coming back. And it's not expensive to join these groups at all. You could join the 501st if you wanted for probably about $100 or less, and then you're a member of that group. You're gonna meet those people, you're gonna get them. They're also members of other groups. So it's a great way, if you're interested in that, you can join that group, and you can get them to come out because you're part of that group, and they're more apt to come out if you're a member. So that helps as well.
And I saw that a lot of the cosplayers that came to our event brought their kids, and I thought that was really cool. Like we were taking care of, you know, there was their wife or their son that was with them, and some of them were like little kid drones, which was adorable, or little kid stormtroopers. But then it's like you're also, don't just relegate it to, well, we can only have cosplayers here. It's like they're bringing their family because this is a different type of event for them, and I feel like if you make it really welcoming for their families, they'll want to come back and put that goodwill back into their families.
Before we move on to how we do the outreach and everything, I think I also just wanted to talk a little bit more about how you can get creators to come to your con, and some good, easy ways to reach out to them. Apologies again if you were in the last session, but I really can't stress this point enough. If you aren't on Twitter, if you're not connecting to them through social media, you're missing a really amazing opportunity. They are incredibly responsive online, much more so than if you try to go through an agent or if you go through official channels. And it's really worthwhile for you to have, and it doesn't have to be you, it could be anybody who's connected to it. I know that in some larger events that I've worked with, we've created specific social media accounts so that we could work back and forth, use it for promotion later on, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, and think about, so if you're a librarian, I'm involved in BIA, which is our Bay Area Young Adult Services Group, and they hold bi-yearly programs that bring in creators, and it gives you a one-on-one chance to talk to creators. So think about that even for something like CLA or ALA. If you end up going, always have your card ready. Most people are very excited when you're like, hey, could you, like, how are your feelings about libraries? And if you're already at an event that sponsors libraries, you know they're pretty friendly to doing library-related events. So you build that relationship already.
Yeah, and I will also say, don't be afraid to just cold email someone. Like, sometimes they don't respond, but sometimes you get surprising responses back of people you thought would never talk to you in real life.
Yeah, Kelly's really, really good at that. She's got us a lot of good talent just by doing cold emails to them. So
nobody wants to talk to Kelly in real life, just through email.
just through email with strangers.
They meet her and they're like, oh, you're Kelly. Okay.
And I've done what you said before too, of just stealing from other events. So I've looked for other events that haven't happened in the area. I look at their author list, I look at their creator list. I'm like, hey, they've come here once. There's a good chance they'll come back again. That's been really valuable for me.
It's a really good one, yeah.
All right. And then one other thing, if you're looking for cheap and free resources, if you're a library, there's a really good chance that you're part of a government of some sort, a city or county. Take advantage of that in the other departments as well. Don't feel bad about reaching out to them to see what they might have to offer. And you can get some really amazing collaborations and end up heading in new directions as well. For another similar event, we worked with a county organization and added a service learning component to it. And so it became about more than just the experience itself, but looking at how we can also do more to support our communities.
Yeah, we ended up getting a grant from AMD to do one of our science programs. They donated a bunch of virtual reality machines, which we are also using at our Comic-Con event, but since we had already built that partnership through something else, they ended up sponsoring things for summer reading, and so they actually sponsored parts of our adult summer reading. So AMD, this virtual reality place, was like, oh sure, we'll sponsor your Dungeons and Dragons program and your anime program and all of these like random nerd things you have. So it's always kind of shocking when you're like, oh, also, do you want to support Dungeons and Dragons? Kind of the positive responses that you can use at your con and then bring those people back in for other things.
Yeah, we also hit up every city department in our city as well. We have our streets department come out. They make it a zero waste event, so we can bill it that way. We share with the parks. Our Parks and Rec will come out and support us. City IT will come out and stream the event for us. The water truck, we've asked for the water truck, so we have a water truck as well. So it's really good to leverage and get good relations with other departments in your city if you have that available.
And it also creates more buy-in from the city when you're like, look how we got every department involved. It's a city-wide event.
And also, there was that Jurassic Park Jeep, so don't be afraid if you see the Jeep on the street to just follow it home at night. That's how John got them. John was like, I was just driving behind it and I wouldn't let it go.
I'm imagining you like, stop!
I had seen it, and then it was one of my, they're my neighbor's friends.
He's turning red because he really like kept it.
They're my neighbor's friends. Okay, they're not my neighbor's
And
friends,
every
but they live
meeting-
close to my neighbors. My neighbors knew actually where they lived. So yeah, I dropped a bookmark that we had already pre-made, and I stapled my card on it, and I was like, hey, you want to come to our event? Call me back. And he did, and
That
so I'm
wasn't
back.
creepy, but every meeting we'd get an update, so I almost got it this time.
It was really weird because my kids were in the car, so that was kind of weird. So I ran.
So can we talk about some ways that you've advertised the event? I mean, it's not very valuable unless you get people there, probably.
You know what? I was actually a little scared to advertise mine outside of my campus. So what we did was, I have a graphic designer, but see, the difference is also is that I had like $12,000 to $15,000 to work with because at the time, because we had I used equity money because we were focusing on an underserved group, okay? And so I had that money. Now, might never have that money again.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of just went a little crazy, because if you don't spend it, you got to give it back. So I had the graphic designer create these banners, because I'm like, okay, well, these banners, I saw these banners. I see these banners every year at Comic-Con, and I'm like, okay, create me an icon similar to Comic-Con without using Comic-Con. So this is now our official logo for our ArtCon that we will just change every year. But we'll change the wording every year if we decide, but we'll always have an ArtCon, and we might use different creators. So she created a lot of these for Black History Month, and then she also created the creators' books on one side and then their likeness on the other side. And so we did this for all of our guests that we had on campus, and so they were up and down the mall, so the students couldn't miss it. And then plus, I like I said, everybody sees my windows, so I had it like all over my windows for my office, so they kept saying, what is that, what is that, what is that? So that was one way that we advertised, and then we advertised with the different departments, and they just kind of told their students, and it was kind of like word of mouth. And then they actually brought their families too. So we had a decent amount, and I was kind of scared for the space, because when people hear Comic-Con, free stuff, I get to dress up, and there may be food, I was a little scared that we would just be overwhelmed, so I kind of didn't want to go outside, because they were like, you need to do a press conference. I was like, no, I don't. Because I just wasn't sure, especially for our first one. So we kind of just did everything in-house, and it actually turned out really well. Everything just flowed nicely. It wasn't too many people, but it was comfortable, and everybody got a chance to do everything. So I'm okay with that for now, based on, you know, what they allow me to do, because it was already hard-pressed for me to sell it to certain people. So, you know, that's
we didn't have the budget for the banners, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
Those
as you
banners
can
are
see,
pricey.
pardon?
Yeah.
Those banners are pricey.
The
Yeah.
banners are gorgeous.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
we were lucky that one of our cities has an electric billboard that they make available for free for nonprofits and other organizations.
Nice.
And so one of our librarians reached out to see if we could get on there, which we did, which was very nice. And then I also want to point out one of the things that we learned, I liked what you had just said, Lisa, about you need something that people can grab onto visually that you can reuse from year to year.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that really successfully our first year, but you can see in the bottom right-hand corner that little voice bubble, talking bubble there.
Yeah.
That's now our new icon for our con that we're going to use throughout into the future. And one of the ways we're planning on advertising for our con this year is actually by having a name the mascot contest. So it's a nice way for people to get involved and interested, for us to put something out there, you know, 4, 5, 6 months in advance, just to kind of start to get them thinking about it.
At the Vegas Valley Comic Book Festival, what we do is, in addition to having a certain amount of logo and branding, every year we have a paid prize contest, design our main promotions poster. And with that, we were also able to reach out into the university, to the art department, because, hey, it looks good on your resume to say, hey, I designed the winning poster and my art went all over town. So that's another way. And then I would say for your marketing, all those networking opportunities we were talking about earlier, that's how you do your very aggressive and shameless guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, we went hard on marketing. We did bookmarks. What else we got here?
We did some coming soon, little things that we handed out
We
at
had,
foundation
like,
events.
handbills and posters. We went to like every local comic shop and we're like, can we just leave these here? Thanks.
I went to the high schools. I went to the high school with Angela and
This is the brand of marketing that I enjoy. I officially call it slap John in a stormtrooper suit and see where it gets us. So we took John around, we took him to high schools, and if you have ever seen like 700 teenagers out for lunch, it's insanity. But when you bring a stormtrooper in, and then this is me, come to Comic-Con, come to Comic-Con, come to Comic-Con, come to Comic-Con, and John's like, photo, photo, photo. And everyone's like, dab. They're like, everybody wanted John to dab in his stormtrooper suit. And then we took, part 2 was we slapped the suit on John, and out he went, and we did our art and wine festival. And off he went, and it was like really hot, and we're just making John do this circle of taking photos with people, but having his handler have flyers in their hand being like, come to our event, and especially with the Art and Wine Festival, that's a lot of people who aren't in our own city who we're trying to market to and get them to come. I think branding, somebody said branding is 1,000% important. We just won the CLA 2017 marketing. Oh, you jealous, Darren?
Rub it in.
Jealous? That's what you get when you have marketing day one.
Yeah, right.
And we're totally rogue. We're not our city brand. We totally went against our city brand on this, but and we won the PR excellence.
Yeah, it was totally worth it.
I know that Angela and I are both also huge fans of Eventbrite. Getting on platforms that aren't just your own website, getting out there where people are is very valuable and very helpful.
Yeah,
Are you still a big fan of Eventbrite, or?
I am. They started limiting the number of emails I can send because I kept sending 8,000 a day. Eventbrite, if you guys don't use it, is a really great platform because people register their ticket for free, and then you acquire their email address when they sign up. So everybody who signed up for last year's Comic-Con, I can immediately send them an email because they were at a previous event and say, here is next year's convention. And then when I needed to send my survey, you can partner with SurveyMonkey, and I sent the survey through the people who had registered, and then they could give me their feedback that way. So it's a great way to accumulate information from your patrons and see what they want to do. I think that's an important strategy as well.
For events where we felt it was going to be overwhelming for like a signing, we actually had people, we forced them to sign up in Eventbrite in advance. That way we help control the flow, and also we collect more information and can reach out to them.
Yeah.
And then also don't forget to have your creators reach out. I mean, they've got huge fan bases through social media. You can see like Raina Togemeyer on Instagram with a beautiful ghost thing that one of our staff members built. But get them to reach out in advance too. You can provide them some language. You can just say, hey, you're coming here. We want to make sure you have a good time. So let your people know. That can also be beneficial for you. Oh yeah, sorry. Here are more of those great banners there. And so now, how do you survive the day of the event?
You cry
for some
a
people,
lot.
it's lots of caffeine.
It's
Yeah,
lots
you
of
cry
crying,
in advance. Yeah.
Blisters, tears. There's so many things. I think the thing is, if you have done all the pre-work and you are highly organized and efficient, your con will go 62% smoothly. You really have to plan for the things that you think might go wrong. And that's one of the great ways that you can do that is by having a great staff. Did you see that nice man with the stop sign?
I did, I know.
He's so angry at us. He's really nice, though.
I didn't see the 5 minutes. I missed that one.
I didn't see the 5 or the 15.
Yep.
We talk a lot. If you guys have questions about Library Comic-Con or you want to see some of this cool swag,
Please come and take some. I don't want to take this home.
Yeah, John doesn't want to take this home, so steal all our ideas, but come up and ask questions before they kick us off. So yeah, thanks for coming. All our info's up here. If you guys have more questions, please tweet at us. You're so ready to clap for me. I'm just excited. Okay.
You can do it. If you want to clap, it's fine.
I kept just waiting just for
It's good.